Hey guys, welcome back to the Perform Motion YouTube channel. It's Tom again, and today we're going to be talking about assessments, or more specifically, just body weight assessments. So we can use these body weight assessments to try and work out if there are any ways that we can improve our lifting with a barbell. I mean, at the end of the day, these movements are going to be very different to how we move under load, but they're quite accessible. You don't need any equipment, and they can very quickly give you some information that you might not be able to see with other movements. So today we're going to be talking about the body weight squat and the toe touch, and just a couple of things that you can look for in both these movements that might give you an idea on just things you can improve. So I think we'll start off with the body weight squat first. I'll play it through and just tell you how you can film and set up for yourself. So if you're just setting up so you can see yourself head to toe, do about 2 or 3 reps from the front. Letting yourself move with the arms in front's fine. And then same kind of thing, turn to one of your sides, your left or right side, same position, and about 2 or 3 reps from the side as well. Excellent. And then we've got a similar kind of thing for the toe touch. So just setting up from the front, maybe 1 or 2 reps from the front. You can do a bit of a hold at the bottom, so it's easy to have a look and assess. And then same thing, turning left or right. Quite a narrow stance with knees straight, just pushing your hips back and trying to touch your toes. Okay. So like I said, like movement's going to be very different, loaded versus unloaded, but there's a couple of things that we can look for in the bodyweight squat that might help us when it comes to barbell lifting. So the first thing we want to be looking for is, does my pelvis move straight down? So one of the big things with discerning a difference between a squat and a hinge is that in the squat, generally speaking, our pelvis should move straight down. And you're going to be having a look at this probably from the side view is going to be a lot easier. So if I play here, let's have a look. I get myself set up. It does look like my pelvis is moving straight down. So I get like a little bit of that classic sort of butt wink position at the bottom. I get a little bit of flexion there, but my pelvis is dropping down into the squat. I'm not over hinging it too much, which is generally a good sign. The next thing we can look for similar here is, do my knees move forward? So if we start from the side view position, I want to be dropping straight down and like I'm trying to push my knees forward at the same time. So I break with my knees first, just kind of drop into the squat. So far, both those things, like I can see that quite well. The next thing we can have a look for is from the front, see if I'm shifting at all. So hip shift is an interesting thing because it's might not necessarily be something you want to get rid of, but maybe if you're feeling like a little bit of a discomfort on one side of your body, it might give you an idea as to why. So if we have a look from the front here, I don't really have an excessive hip shift. It's pretty good. Nothing really major to be looking for. If I pause in the bottom position here like so, get rid of that, play it. It's not really any sort of major hip shift. You can see I'm pushing my left knee forward a little bit more there, but otherwise nothing major. So then the last thing we can look for is probably from the side view again is midfoot. Can I stay on my midfoot? So as I come down into the squat, ideally what I'm looking for is my sternum to be roughly over the top of my midfoot here, which it looks like it is, which is excellent. And then from the front view, does it look like I'm getting into pronation on the inside of my foot? So yeah, if I look at the bottom of my feet there, you can see my feet start to pronate and flatten out a little bit, which is excellent. So I'm finding my midfoot both ways, which is excellent. So far going through, like the big things I notice from my squat here is that I can drop my pelvis straight down, I can move my knees forward, and I can stay on my midfoot. The other things I can see as well, if I look at it, is just sort of how I'm achieving those positions. So even though I drop my pelvis straight down in slow motion, you can see that I do get a bit of a butt wink at the bottom position here. So potentially maybe I'm starting a little bit too extended somewhere in the lift, or I don't have enough space in my hips to achieve enough internal rotation to come down the bottom of the squat. And I guess this is where we use the toe touch. So we can sort of complement what we find with the bodyweight squat with the toe touch to see if, do I have enough range to actually move into this? Is this like a range of motion issue, or is this like a movement issue, I guess? So if we play the toe touch again, have a little look from the side view, where do I flex through my spine? So as I come down, if I just kind of like hold this position, I'll pause it there once I get my balance. So if we have a look at my toe touch here, you can see sort of like right in the middle of my back, sort of right about here, that's where I'm really starting to push my ribs back. So sort of like my lower thoracic TL junction sort of area. That's where I'm really starting to push back my ribs. So often this is like a position that the body goes into when we don't have a heap of space in the hips to be able to sit back into a hinge. So the big thing I'm noticing here is that my knees are straight and I'm trying to go into a toe touch position and push my hips back, but I can't actually push my hips back that far. So as a result, I'm starting to push back my ribs instead, so I can kind of like share the load between the two joints. So a bit of information there that I have is like, okay, maybe I don't actually have enough hip space to be able to comfortably hinge in that position, or at least have space to be able to push my hips backwards. And that kind of moves on to the second thing we look for is, can I sit back into my hips? So even though I'm trying to lock my knees and push my hips backwards, because my thoracolumbar joint is flexing or my mid back is flexing, I'm actually folding over instead of sitting backwards. So it gives me a bit more information than like, okay, maybe I don't have enough space to sit back into the hips again. The next thing we can look for is my knees straight. Are my knees staying straight in the movement? Which they are, which is good. But I think that's part of the reason why I have such limited range of motion in this. So that's a good thing to have a look as well, is like, especially if you're finding that you can touch your toes, is make sure that your knees are straight, because we want to have straight knees to make sure that we're getting like a true kind of result with this test. It's very easy to get a false positive just by softly bending the knees as we touch the toes. You give us space to move through other parts of the body, which we may not have when we have our knees straight. So the biggest thing that's happening when we have our knees straight is that our femurs are properly internally rotating. So this is giving me a good idea of how much space I have to internally rotate at the moment. And the last thing as well is, can I balance? So if we have a little look through here, as I was coming down, so I was starting to push my hips back because my ribs went backwards at the last moment. And like I started to shift from sitting backwards to almost folding forwards. There was a bit of that wobble there. So between these two tests, it's given me an idea of like, okay, with my bodyweight squat, I can push my knees forward, my pelvis drops straight down. That's excellent. I've got roughly the skills I need to be able to do to squat. However, when I move into the toe touch, it's looking like I don't quite have enough femoral internal rotation or like a hip sort of hinge to be able to drop comfortably into my squat. So when I'm squatting, I don't want to be sitting back into a hinge, but I do need to have enough hip internal rotation space to be able to get into and use my hips. So I don't really necessarily want to be necessarily changing how I squat, but it might mean that I need to be doing some more hinging accessories so I have enough space in my hips to squat comfortably. So everyone's toe touch and everyone's bodyweight squat looks a little bit different, but hopefully this little checklist gives you an idea of a couple of things you can look for when looking at your own bodyweight assessments. Hopefully it helped, and send us a question if you have any.